see trees of green.
Peter, the Rock. Peter's preeminent position among the apostles was symbolized at the very beginning of his relationship with Christ. At their first meeting, Christ told Simon that his name would thereafter be Peter, which translates as rock. The startling thing was that, aside from the single time that Abraham is called a rock in Isaiah 51, 1-2, in the Old Testament, only God was called a rock. The word rock was not used as a proper name in the ancient world. If you were to turn to a companion and say, "From now on your name is Asparagus," people would wonder, why asparagus? What is the meaning of it? What does it signify? Indeed, why call Simon the fisherman rock? Christ was not given to meaningless gestures, and neither were the Jews as a whole when it came to names. Giving a new name meant that the status of the person was changed, as when Abraham's name was changed to Abraham, Jacob's to Israel, Eliakim to Joachim, or the names of the 4 Hebrew youths. But no Jew had ever been called rock. The Jews would give other names taken from nature, such as Deborah, which means bee, and Rachel, which means you, but never rock. In the New Testament, James and John were nicknamed Boanigers, meaning sons of thunder, by Christ, but that was never regularly used in the place of their original names, and it certainly was not given as a new name. But in the case of Simon Bar-Jonah, his new name, Kepas, Greek Petros, definitely replaced the old. Promises to Peter. When he first saw Simon, Jesus looked at him and said, "Thou art Simon, the son of Jonah. Thou shalt be called Cephas," which is by interpretation a stone. John 1:42. The word Cephas is merely the transliteration of the Aramaic Kepha into Greek. Later, after Peter and the other disciples had been with Christ for some time, they went to Caesarea Philippi, where Peter made his profession of faith. "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." Jesus told him that this truth was specially revealed to him, and then he solemnly reiterated, "And I say also unto thee, that thou art Peter." To this was added the promise that the church would be founded, in some way, on Peter. Then, 2 important things were told to the apostle. "Whatsoever thou shalt bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever thou shalt loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." Here Peter was singled out for the authority that provides for the forgiveness of sins and the making of disciplinary rules. Later, the apostles as a whole would be given similar power, in Matthew 18:18, but here Peter received it in a special sense. Peter alone was promised something else also. "I will give unto thee the keys of the kingdom of heaven." In ancient times, keys were the hallmark of authority. A walled city might have one great gate, and that gate had one great lock, worked by one great key. To be given the key to the city, an honor that exists even today, though its importance is lost, meant to be given free access to and authority over the city. The city to which Peter was given the keys was the heavenly city itself. This symbolism for authority is elsewhere used in the Bible, Isaiah 22:22 and Revelations 1:18. Finally, after the resurrection, Jesus appeared to his disciples and asked Peter 3 times, "Lovest thou me?" In repentance for his threefold denial, Peter gave a threefold affirmation of love. Then Christ, the Good Shepherd, gave Peter the authority he earlier had promised. "Feed my sheep." This specifically included the other apostles, since Jesus asked Peter, "Lovest thou me more than these?" The word "these" referring to the other apostles who were present. Thus was completed the prediction made just before Jesus and his followers were sent for the last time to the Mount of Olives. Immediately before his denials were predicted, Peter was told, "Simon, Simon, behold, Satan hath desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not. And when thou art converted, after the denials, strengthen thy brethren." It was Peter who Christ prayed would have faith that would not fail, and that would be a guide for the others, and his prayer, being perfectly efficacious, was sure to be fulfilled. Who is the rock? Now take a closer look at the key verse. Thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church. Disputes about this passage have always been related to the meaning of the term rock. To whom or to what does it refer? Since Simon's new name of Peter itself means rock, the sentence could be rewritten as, Thou art rock, and upon this rock I will build my church. The play on words seems obvious, but commentators wishing to avoid what follows from this, namely the establishment of the papacy, have suggested that the word rock could not refer to Peter, but must refer to his profession of faith, or to Christ. From the grammatical point of view, the phrase, this rock, must relate back to the closest noun. Peter's profession of faith, Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God, is 2 verses earlier, while his name, a proper noun, is in the immediately preceding clause. As an analogy, consider this artificial sentence. I have a car and a truck, and it is blue. So which is blue? The truck, because that is the noun closest to the pronoun, it. This is all the more clear if the reference to the car is 2 sentences earlier, as the reference to Peter's profession is 2 sentences earlier than the term rock. Another alternative. The previous argument also settles the question of whether the word refers to Christ himself, since he is mentioned within the profession of faith. The fact that he is elsewhere, by a different metaphor called the cornerstone, does not disprove that here Peter is the foundation. Christ is naturally the principal and, since he will be returning to heaven, the invisible foundation of the church that he will establish. But Peter is named by him as the secondary and, because he and his successors will remain on earth, the visible foundation. Peter can be a foundation only because Christ is the cornerstone. In fact, the New Testament contains 5 different metaphors for the foundation of the church. One cannot take a single metaphor from a single passage and use it to twist the plain meaning of the other passages. Rather, one must respect and harmonize the different passages, for the church can be described as having different foundations, since the word foundation can be used in different senses. Look at the Aramaic. Opponents of the Catholic interpretation of Matthew 16:18 sometimes argue that in the Greek text the name of the apostle is Petros, while rock is rendered Petra. They claim that the former refers to a small stone, while the latter refers to a massive rock. So if Peter was meant to be the massive rock, why isn't his name Petra? Note that Christ did not speak to his disciples in Greek. He spoke Aramaic, the common language of Palestine at the time. In that language, the word for rock is kepa, which is what Jesus called him in everyday speech. Note that in John 1:42, he was told, Thou shalt be called Cephas. What Jesus said in Matthew 16:18 was, Thou art kepa, and upon this kepa I will build my church. When Matthew's Gospel was translated from the original Aramaic to Greek, there arose a problem which did not confront the evangelist when he first composed his account of Christ's life. In Aramaic, the word kepa has the same ending whether it refers to a rock or is used as a man's name. In Greek, though, the word for rock, Petra, is feminine in gender. The translator could use it for the second appearance of kepa in the sentence, but not for the first, because it would be inappropriate to give a man a feminine name. So he put a masculine ending on it, and hence Peter became Petros. Furthermore, the premise of the argument against Peter being the rock is simply false. In 1st century Greek, the words Petros and Petra were synonyms. They had previously possessed the meanings of small stone and large rock in some early Greek poetry, but by the 1st century, this distinction was gone, as Protestant Bible scholars admit. See D.A. Carson's remarks on this passage in the Expositor's Bible Commentary, Grand Rapids, Zondervan Books. Some of the effect of Christ's play on words was lost when his statement was translated from the Aramaic into Greek, but that was the best that could be done in Greek. In English, like Aramaic, there is no problem with endings, so an English rendition could read, Thou art rock, and upon this rock I will build my church. Consider another point. If the rock really did refer to Christ, why did Matthew leave the passage as it was? In the original Aramaic, and in the English, which is a closer parallel to it than is the Greek, the passage is clear enough. Matthew must have realized that his readers would conclude the obvious from Matthew 16:18. If he meant Christ to be understood as the rock, why didn't he say so? Why did he take a chance and leave it up to Paul to write a clarifying text? The reason, of course, is that Matthew knew full well that what the sentence seemed to imply was just what it was really saying. It was Simon, weak as he was, who was chosen to become the rock, and thus the first link in the chain of the papacy.